Welcome to the Spirit Sessions podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us where I'll help you find your true spiritual home, where every single aspect of you is holy ground, holy ground, holy ground, holy ground.
This is a Spirit Session podcast with Katie Silcox. Venga chicos, empezamos.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hi everyone, Katie here. This podcast is intended to inspire you, educate you, and most importantly, support you on your journey towards knowing who you really are, that inner self, that inner teacher. I am not a psychologist or a medical doctor and do not offer professional health or medical advice on this podcast. If you are suffering from any kind of psychological or medical issue, please do the right thing and seek help from your qualified health professional. Hey everyone, I'm always excited about podcasts, but this one's really special. I'm giving you guys a 48-minute taste of what ended up being a 2-hour workshop in Spirit Sessions. So you're going to get kind of the opening lecture, and I chose this particular sort of audio for you all from Spirit Sessions because I think it gives a really good taste of my approach, where I am in my journey, and the more spirit soul part of Shakti school and Ayurveda school and everything we're doing inside the classroom. So it's gonna be fun, and yes, it's not always sex, bonbons, and roses, but I hope you enjoy, and if it speaks to you and resonates with you and touches something in you, this is what we're all about over here. And as you know, as we've been saying, we only have one time that you can join us really for the year-long program, and that's January 18th, 2023. We're doing it. And if you want to set up a call with one of our amazing coaches, we've got a link for you below. All right, guys, enjoy this beautiful podcast, and sending you that 360-degree love. It's been a long, long time since we've seen each other, and here we are together. I'm really always genuinely grateful for this group and honored to be with you all. A really sweet topic today, and a topic that touches very deeply to the essence of my practices and my experience, and I'm sure yours, and that is this topic of love. I have, as many of you know, studied the tantric tradition and many traditions, and what I'm beginning to synthesize with age is that all of our longing for love, and if you go on Spotify, you can pay witness to this scientific fact that most of the songs are about this longing and the experience of the longing being temporarily fulfilled, and more commonly, the experience of this love being lost, right? Music and poetry, in a way, are the only things that can approximate the experience of love and loss. And I think that all love songs are actually about the same love song. And that is the longing that all of us as humans feel to be seen. And that what is seen is okay, if not beautiful. And also to see others, and that what we see is okay, if not lovely and wanted and beautiful. And so at the end of the day, this love story that we're all singing about on Spotify and singing about, some of my favorite are these old crooners that just seem to know how to do it so much better than these youngsters today, right? But that really touch the essence of the spiritual life. This longing that you guys, I know, have, or you wouldn't be with this kiddo. You want to know the divine. And some of you really want it. And I want you to know that I respect that and I feel that as well. And so today is about the self-love hype sessions, but we have to kind of dig into that term a little. It may be a little different than what you think. I know a lot of you have already done Ayurveda school. We may have a few of you here who are currently in Ayurveda school, but I'm seeing the old schoolers. And so this class will not be a class about getting in the bathtub and doing your breast massage with coconut and jasmine oil and, reminding yourself that you're a goddess. This class will not be about Ayurveda self-care. In a way, I'm like, oh my Lord, if I have to talk about Ayurveda self-care again, I'm gonna like run away, right? And that's a good thing, right? We should be deepening our understanding of self-love as we go. And at the same time, y'all know I'll be getting down with some Ayurvedic self-care every day. But the difference between doing a coconut oil massage on your skin in the late summertime because the heat's built up in our bodies through a spirit of hating inflammation and hating pitta and feeling like something's wrong with you if you don't do it is very different than the spirit of a yogi down by the river coating his body in coconut oil and chanting love songs to himself and feeling the great privilege that it is to be alive. So today we're going to do two different methods that are really different. And one is a little bit of a backdoor trick. And one is a very much open-hearted front door journey. And obviously, always feel free to take notes on everything, but I'm going to give you guys a PDF of the second journey with the steps so that you can practice it and you can share it. And I want to just shout out to this book, and I'll give you guys the link on Amazon to it, but it's called Already Free. And it's by a teacher called Bruce Tift, who's a Buddhist psychotherapist. It's called Already Free: Buddhism Meets Psychotherapy on the Path of Liberation. I can't recommend this book enough. It's like up on the top 10 list for me of like lifetime books. I've read it more than once, and I could never let anyone borrow it because it's just as I like to do to books. It's just, this book has been my bitch. Like, this poor book is like covered in tea stains. I've written all my thoughts. There's tears on this book. And I think that's really the way a book has been greatly loved. And I just really wanted to take this class today with you all to share this book that's been so important in my life. And the central premise we'll go through. And then what I've done is it's a book for the smarties, like you all, right? Like it's a book that almost needs to be digested and read more than once. And so what I want to do today is essentially take a little bit of his method and break it down a little bit into bite-sized chunks. None of this is going to be new for you all, but we can practice it together. None of these teachings are new. But what's so, I think, unique about this book and this approach is that he does a wonderful job at bringing together what can feel like somewhat polarized viewpoints in the spirituality community. And he brings them together. And I would add the spirituality /wellness /trauma you guys know, like that whole community of like, we want to feel better. We want to be better. Right. And so what he says is that there's two essential approaches to interfacing with the way that we don't love ourselves. with pain, with trauma, with suffering that these ancients have been speaking of for thousands of years. There's two real ways of working with it. And we could think of it a little bit as a Western approach and an Eastern approach, and I think there's some value in that. But it's not that simplistic, because a lot of the approaches that we think of as Western, we've borrowed a lot from the East. And a lot from the East, by the way, borrowed a lot from the West. And so there's really no separation, because humans, for as long as we have been alive, have been really sharing things. There's a lot of psychology, as you guys know, in yoga and Buddhism. And there's a lot of Buddhism in, especially if you live in California, right, in psychology. And so he says, but we can think of these approaches as what he calls fruitional and developmental. And this really helped me understand two seemingly separate paths that I've been on for the past while. The developmental path is a path whereby you are in direct contact with your past, with what happened when you were younger, and primarily your relationship to the people that informed you about reality from age 0 to 6. Y'all will see it on the podcast. If you're a podcast listener, I had the honor and privilege of interviewing Dr. John Douliard yesterday for Spirit Sessions, and he said 95% of the thought, unless we do some work, and some practice, 95% of the thoughts that we think every day, this wiring of our neurology, is laid down from age 0 to 6. So that's astounding. It means if you don't really question your thoughts and your beliefs and your belief systems and reality, if you don't question that perceptual reality, essentially adults are walking around with the beliefs about reality that they had when they were 6. And that made sense to me. But, we want to evolve. This is an evolutionary psychology. So the developmental is really important. And here is where you would find the work that we would do around trauma, the work that we would do around attachment, the work that we would do around any sort of a family of origin stuff, abuse, all that kind of stuff that all of us have undergone to certain greater and lesser extents, if not, most of us. That would fit into a developmental approach. And it's sometimes really necessary and important. And then on the other side, you've got what he calls the fruitional approach. And the fruitional approach is very different. And it says, there actually is no past. There's just our perception of it showing up as reactivity in the raw, intense experience in the body right here and right now. And the fruitional approach is based upon the premise that everything you need is in this present moment right here and right now. That around this whole experience is a quality of mind that many of us in this class have tasted or experienced, that is pure presence, and one could say loving awareness, and that loving awareness is the only true reality. And true love that has to start with loving ourselves. It really does. The experience of love within, true love, is true freedom. And true freedom always leads to more love. The Indian sage I have written up for you all in the worksheet I'll give you at the end of class, Nisargadatta Mahara, says, wisdom tells me I am nothing. Love tells me I'm everything. And between the two, my life flows. And so what I love about this book, which I'm sure all of you will get, it is that it is not a polarized oppositional take on how to work with your stuff. The fruitional really does support the developmental, and the developmental supports the fruitional. And we really do need to explore both of them. There may be moments in your life where you explore one of them more than another. Today in this class, we will not be working in the developmental role, and that really isn't the role we work in too much here. We're going to be really focused on this realm of the fruitional, where we can attend to a part of our mind that is very different than the 6-year-olds that are all running the show, for me at least, a lot of the time, right? With this idea that in order to experience greater and greater levels of consciousness, freedom, and love, we have to access a different part of the mind than these younger states that are very, very reactive. If we want to think of it from a more evolutionary biology perspective, what we're speaking about, guys, is fight, flight, and freeze. And these reactionary patterns that are truly different from an openness and a presence are very fast. Have you noticed that? You're like doing really great. You're like feeling like you're really like getting awakened, and you're having these moments, and then something happens and the reaction time is milliseconds. And so this idea of the fruitional is that we aren't attempting to rid ourselves of any of that. In fact, we can't. It's hardwired into our biology to go into differing states of fight, flight, and freeze. If you don't do that, probably there's something wrong with your nervous system. So this deeper level of self-love is a radical idea that I know you've heard before, but I want to remind you of it again today, and I'm going to repeat it over and over again in different ways, because that's how I've learned and how I need it piecemealed to me weekly from my teacher to these ears. You know, if you heard me in session with my mentor, if you heard these sessions every week, it's like, well, let me tell you this thing I've been telling you for the past 2 years. Let me tell it to you one more time. I'm like, oh yeah, oh yeah. So here's what it is. The fruitional approach to self-love. And you're going to take it in intellectually, and then in a moment we're going to work with it experientially, because those are two radically different things, okay? Here's the statement. You and your life and everyone in it are not a problem to be solved. This is the basis of the fruitional approach according to Buddhism through the lens of very much a genius, Bruce Tift. And I'm giving him a little bit of love today because I'm reading the book, but this doesn't belong to him. This is the fundamental idea of Tantra. You, all of you, your life and everyone in it are not a problem to be fixed. And when I heard that, I'm like, yeah, but there's so much bad stuff going on, and we've got to fix it. And that's also true. But we're operating in different levels of consciousness and certainly action. The essence of the Bhagavad Gita is first steep yourself in a quality of silence, then act. Then take on the world. But my approach to the world is not that it is a fundamental problem to be solved. The alchemy in this is massive. Let's talk about some science around it. when you approach whatever situation you have going on, let's say in your physical body, your health, with the attitude of this is a big problem and I need to kill it, solve it, fix it, the more subtle levels of mind and emotion and quickly therein your physicality go into overt and subtle states of fight and flight. So when we approach our inflammation, when we approach our degeneration, when we approach our, whatever kophic imbalance you've got going on with an attitude that it's a fundamental problem to be solved, physiologically, we go into a state where the tissues dehydrate. If we're in a fight state where we consider it a problem to be solved, the tissues inflame. If we're in a state of freeze, the tissues might go into lockdown and become more stagnant. This is physical. And so the beginning premise isn't woo-woo, as my friend said, Fruit Loops and wind chimes. This is actually physical. That while we want, of course, to be healthy, and we want our societies to be healthy, and we want our relationships to be healthy, and we want our families to be in a better state than the ones we grew up in, and all these very valid goals in the daily life, the approach and orientation towards things actually creates a vast distinction in the results and outcomes. This is also a scientific principle that the observer actually changes the outcome of the scientific experiment. The observer is you. And the observer is what we're really interested in activating. And that observer is your inner divine masculine. The other piece of that is called Shakti, and this is your inner divine feminine, and this is, ready for it, the fundamental raw energy of your body. If we keep following anger or sadness, grief, fear, if we just keep making it not a problem, eventually, as the Ayurvedic texts say, all pain on the other side is bliss. So this deeply radical reorientation towards life as not problematic is the most important part of the path of self-love. If not, and I'm sure you've had this experience, and I certainly have, of doing more for myself, or putting more on my to-do list, or going to see a different practitioner to solve a particular health issue, or going to a different therapist, all these things that we do to try to sort of fix a sense of a problematic self lead to more armoring on the heart. So what we're going to work with today is about dissolving our internal divisions. And I love this phrase that Bruce uses. He says, and by the way, guys, this is very subtle stuff. I realize who's in the room today. You guys aren't like, and I know who I'm talking to. So I'm going to go to the most subtle aspect of it for you all. He calls it fundamental self-aggression. And I was like, wow, that's such an intense phrase. And he says, it's not just the moments in your life when you are being actually mean to yourself. And y'all, I know when that's happening for me, and I'm looking at myself in the mirror and being critical, or I'm, having a negative thought about myself. Those are obvious forms of self-aggression. Let's not do that, right? But it's even more subtle. It's a fundamental layer underneath all of that. It's a fundamental orientation that we grew up in of aggression. What does that look like? Fundamental aggression is a refusal to be in reality in this moment exactly as it is without wanting to change it. And so the depths of self-love and love for everything can only come through when we're willing to be here. without squirming and wiggling our way out. Okay, I want to talk about the ways we squirm because we all have our favorite ways. Some of you are squirming right now. We are all living in familiar trance states, right? Where one of the ways we fundamentally squirm out of reality is that we take unconsciously, by the way, nobody needs to feel bad about any of these things. We're not doing them consciously, right? Usually. We start to take what we're experiencing in the moment as the totality of existence. Have you ever felt that where you're like, oh my God, this is happening and it's always going to be this way and it's always been this way and it's never going to change? Like, that's actually an avoidance technique. Why? I'm actually pivoting off the rawness of the experience and I'm going into a narrative. So one of the fundamental ways that human beings squirm off of the goddess, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the raw embodiment of experience. We squirm off of the goddess by engaging in familiar narratives. Here are a few of my favorites. This isn't fair. I do everything right. I'm a freaking Ayurveda teacher. Why do I have a cold sore? My mom doesn't get any of these issues and she's out with her friends at 65 drinking wine and eating brie. This isn't fair, right? So one of mine is, this isn't fair. We see how very habitual patterns of narrative really run a lot of our lives. And we see how feeling abandoned has been going on for a really long time inside of us. We use a lot of other strategies to squirm off. Here's another one. And by the way, these things are subtle, they're snake-like, they are unconscious. We don't need to feel bad about them. And most of the time, this is the definition of yoga, we're just not aware of them. We're aware of some of them. But here's another way we squirm, our strategies. Okay, well, because I'm so damn smart, let me come up with a to-do list that's going to get me out of this situation X. Anybody? Raise your hand. You pittas out there. You're strategizing right now. You're like, this is a really cool workshop. I'm going to go get this book. You know what? I can do a workshop like this at my studio. And that's totally fine. But it's a way of squirming out of actually what's happening right now is you have a girl named Katie Silcox that's superhuman. Not superhuman. That's a very human person who's like opening her heart to you. And you're, maybe if we were all in the room, we could feel it. You're opening your heart too. And that's a lot to hold. So let me squirm off this a little bit. Katie's a little too heart opened right now, or it's making me feel mine open. Here's another one. Our addictions. Y'all know this. This is Ayurveda 101, right? But like this is the reminder, the addictions from great to small. How often are we in the car and it's boring? And I don't like to feel bored. I like to feel stimulated and intellectually interested. Boredom is intolerable to me. So what do? I reach over for the iPhone. That's an addiction pattern. It's saying, you know what, boredom, you suck. You're not allowed to be on the planet, boredom. I'm going to get rid of you. And that, guys, is a fundamental aggression towards boredom. Okay, here's another one. We create drama. Have you ever life has been just a little bit too stable? Yeah. Let's text somebody. Let's text an ex-boyfriend. I don't know what you all do. I'm obviously sharing my own damn stories. But we create a little drama. The drama is a wonderful distraction. Because then we get to talk about the drama to everybody else. So the first state of coming out of the trance of squirming is that we realize that we are in a trance, that we realize that we're in a state of wanting to get away from this moment right now. That's the first step, is just wake up. Okay, whoa, hey, I'm kind of in a state of fundamental aggression towards reality. Wake up. Step 2 is, okay, I'm awake. Now I have to learn how to stay. Learning how to be with myself, learning how to tolerate my feelings, learning how to tolerate my sensations, learning how to be with my fears and my anger and my irritation and my longing without trying, here's the kicker, you guys, without trying to change them, with no hope for them alchemizing into bliss. This starts to actually dissolve what he calls the neurotic strategies that have allowed us not to feel and to avoid our core vulnerability. When we really commit to love and to staying with ourselves, because we've been, all of us, abandoning ourselves for a long time, when we really commit to staying and not crafting more drama about how it's not us, it's everything else and everyone else, and we really hold the intention of staying, what we find, the more we stay and the more we stay and the more we stay with these states, is that at the fundamental core of these emotions that we're running from is our vulnerability. And that's a universal for everyone. We don't have anything under control. Pema Chodron calls this fundamental groundlessness. But the beauty of being in your core vulnerability, which is fundamental groundlessness, is that as you then make that the object of your meditation, that starts to open you to something else. And I don't want to say much about it because that's an intimate thing for you. We'll walk into that a little today. Our neurotic strategies are dissociative strategies. To use the language of psychology, our neurotic strategies are dissociative strategies, meaning anything I kind of overthink about or over worry about or over strategize about or attempt to make plans around, to control, are ways of leaving. A quote from the book, he says, when we have less neurotic suffering, it requires less avoidance of difficult experiencing. We're already living with them. We're already acting like angry, abandoned, worthless people some of the time because that's how we feel. But because we don't acknowledge this, they are expressed, these feelings, unconsciously and indirectly, and or we project it on others. Woo! Bruce. So stage 1, wake up. Okay, I'm running from this moment. Stage 2, learn how to stay and tolerate yourself and not try to change it. Got it? So easy to say. Number 3, acceptance. Surrender, right? Over time, we start to cultivate the ability to really accept ourselves and what we're experiencing more and more. We accept. We start to release this sense of fundamental aggression that something needs to change I've got to get my dosha down. I've got to get married. I've got to do this. I've got to get another degree. I've got to do that. They've done science, they've done studies on people with cancer, and they found that those that attempted to fight the cancer and hated the cancer and were super pissed off that they got cancer and they wanted to fight it and they were going to just not accept that they had it, had less outcomes, positive outcomes, as the people who were like, yeah, let's do what we need to do treatment wise to get rid of cancer, but who also deeply accepted it as a part of their life, actually had much better patient outcomes. So this is in no way shirking us from the responsibility of scraping our tongue and not eating ding dongs every night, right? Of doing all the great things so many of you have done Ayurveda school have learned. This doesn't take away the responsibility we have to go to therapy and do the work on this developmental side, which we could really include all of the self-care practices in. But this is, think of it as like, this is the advanced stuff, y'all, right? This is the real deal. And especially as I hope you and I continue to grow together and age together, this is what we begin to do as we mature upon the spiritual path. We say at this stage, the acceptance stage, a radical yes to whatever it is that comes through the field of Katie Silcox. You fill in your name right there. We have a radical yes at this stage. All right, that can get really subtle. I'm going to actually say yes to the way that I'm fundamentally aggressive towards myself sometimes. I'm going to say yes to the way that I do feel abandoned. I'm going to say yes to my eye bags, my bloated belly, my legs, my arms, my issues around childhood. I'm going to say yes to middle age, old age, wrinkles. I'm going to say yes to rain, sun, shine. It is all yes. And that doesn't mean that you have to go hang out with everybody that you may have said no to. But we have a fundamental consciousness of yes. Quoting here, Bruce, he says, this is the energetic, experiential center of gravity shift. This is where it all shifts. And, you know, like him or not, Eckhart Tolle, wonderful quote from him, something he said, when you begin to really be in reality as it is and have presence and a spirit of yes around everything, you will begin to watch, and I'm not quoting him exactly, you will begin to watch the way reality begins to show up for you when you aren't constantly in aggression against reality. So let's review, and I've got a PDF for you guys, but like number 1, wake up to the trance. Number 2, learn to stay. Number 3, choose to accept ourselves right now, exactly as we are. We say this radical yes to everything, even the way we may be doing the practice wrong, right? Number 4, yesterday in the interview with Dr. Douliard, he said, I think it was Thomas Merton, one of these old Western writers, said, there's really only 3 things that you need to do in the spiritual walk. Number 1, be kind. Number 2, be kind. And the third is that you're going to be kind. And he said, I think that there's a reason why it's 3. Like, okay, be kind. Yeah, all right. Okay, but be kind to everybody. But the second, be kind. Oh no, like, no. Like now somebody's being really rude to me. You still want me to be kind? Yes, be kind again. And then again, you're going to do it over and over and over again. And so this 4th stage is that we do the practice of being kind to our worst fears. I told you guys, this is advanced stuff, okay? And he uses a bunch of beautiful examples in the book, and they're not surprising. It's examples that I've heard from you all. It's examples I've heard from working with clients back in the day, one-on-one all the time. I'm super afraid that I will X, Y, and Z. What if you could meet that with a fundamental sense of kindness towards the worst fears? We begin to move towards the things that we have been avoiding with a spirit of kindness. So it's not only that we just name them and wake up from the trance. It's not only that we accept that they're here and let them be here, but now we're beginning to enter into this real stage of the lover where we are moving towards fear, anger, hate, fear. All of these boil down to fear and seduction, wanting things to be a certain way and being afraid of things happening we don't want, that we start to move towards them with kindness. We bring, another way of saying it is, we bring a warm engagement to our feelings and our sensations in our body. On a psychological level or a therapeutic level, developmentally, what we're doing is we're moving towards the little inner child as an adult. So imagine the fear parts in us, the parts of us we don't really like, the parts we don't want to feel are little. And that's been really helpful for me to think of it that way. And I think about my niece and nephew and like, how would you approach a child that was scared or angry, upset? And that's kind of like that loving feeling you have for your children. We can engage ourselves that way. A big special thanks to Kevin Carlisle of Goodbye Gemini, who wrote this beautiful podcast music, and to DJ Juan Pablo Jimenez in southern Spain for mixing it and making it magic.